Welcome everybody to the Disruptor Studio Thought Leader session. My name is Paulo Corey. I'm the studio director for the Disruptor League. Disruptor League is a community of innovators, designers, disruptors, and general misfits who are coming together to support each other and form radical relationships and support each other as we try to blow up the traditional ways of working and making the world a better place. Disruptor Thought Leader webinars are all about experts geeking out, sharing the inside track on unique, hidden, nuanced, and sometimes just plain strange parts of innovation and disruption. So these are live 60-minute sessions that are co-led with an industry expert and a Disruptor League facilitator like myself. These are recorded sessions, so you can always go back into our archive and see the ones we've held in the past. We've had some great guests, but today I'm super pumped about our session today. We have Anna Murphy, who's going to be talking to us all about using boards to innovate and push your organization forward. Taking what sometimes is seen as a role that's sometimes just a formality and transforming that from seat warmer to someone who's going to push the organization, drive their mission, drive innovation. Anna's been doing this for a while and has become quite an expert on developing high-performing boards. She's been the CEO of United Way South Michigan for over 15 years and has transformed the ways that United Way, not only locally, but globally, works with boards to drive their mission forward. And this passion about driving high-performing boards isn't just with United Way. I think I counted you're on 6 or 7 different boards. So
yeah, I need to figure that one out.
Yeah, really, this is something you obviously believe in. So today Anna's going to walk us through a little bit about her own experience, how you foster your board partnership, how to and some of the tools that you use to actually have these conversations. So now the format of the session today is going to be, Anna will chat for a little while, share her knowledge, then we'll open it up for some Q&A towards the end. So if you have any questions along the way, feel free to drop them in the chat. I'll collect them and we'll bring them up when the presentation's done. All right, Anna, over to you.
All right. Well, thank you. I'm going to share my screen. Yes, I want to continue. Oh, look at that. All right. So can you all see it? I know that's always the question of the day. Can you see it? I can't see all of you, so but I know you're all there. So okay, why isn't it moving? Okay, there we go. So again, as Paula said, we're here today to kind of learn about some things that we do, and I've learned about how to create a high-performing board. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited that you're all here. The content that I share today really has come together through a variety of sources, not just my own experience, but other tools and resources, as I always like to learn from others as well. And I do want to make sure that if you've got like a burning question or burning comment or something, throw it in the chat. We'll try to get to that. If we don't get to it during the session, we'll get through the Q&A part, but I will want to address that. And I also believe that one of the best ways to learn is from each other. So if you've got comments to share, go ahead and put them in the chat. And again, we'll share those, or if I make a pause, we can share them at that time. But I'm going to set a little bit of context about my experience and where I learned from, and then share a high-level overview of what I call a recipe for creating high-performing board using innovative techniques. And I say high level because I could go way deeper into some of this if we were on for longer than 30 minutes. So this is really high level, and we can always chat more about getting into each of the ingredients down the road. So setting the context, as Paulo said, I've been the CEO for 15 years. I've been with this United Way for 22 years. And I can honestly say that I still approach each day kind of the same way, eyes wide open, full of excitement, wonder where we're going to go, what change is going to occur, what risk can we take today. And so I still go in every day just excited to be a part of the work that we do. United Way is a dues paying member of United Way Worldwide. We pay dues to use the brand, and we have access to training, innovation, corporate connections. We are autonomous in how we govern, and the money stays local, with the exception of the dues. We serve about 250,000 people in the 3 counties, and we raise nearly $5 million. I have a staff team of 24, and right now I have a board of 14. So I want to get a sense of who is on the call, from whether you're a board member, a board chair, a CEO, another role in an organization. So I'm going to put this poll up, and bear with me. So relaunch, continue. Okay, do you see the poll? Okay, so if you could just take a minute. Oh, yes, great. It's already happening. I was telling Paulo this kind of one of those new things for me is the poll. So I'll just give you another 20 seconds or so. So we've got some folks that are on a board, being that it's their first experience. We've got some that have had experience on boards, a couple CEOs, other positions. We don't have anyone that's a current board chair. Interesting. All right, I'm gonna end that and get rid of that. So again, thank you for doing that poll. It just gives me a sense of who's on the call. And everything I talk about today can be applied to both nonprofit and for-profit. Probably your small to medium-sized organizations. I'm not sure how this would fit into like a Fortune 500 or a Fortune 100. It's worth a shot, worth a try to maybe sometime see that though. When I started with United Way as the president, our board was 32 people. And they were mostly, and no offense, please don't take any offense, middle-aged white men. And that were pretty much from the C-suite of their companies. The agenda that was always presented was very simple agenda. Not too many questions were asked. Rarely did anybody challenge or disagree with anything. So it was mostly a silent board. And it was really just the CEO talking. Within a couple years after I became president, we were able to change the bylaws to adjust the board size from 32 to 19, which is really still a little bit big. We rotated several board members off by not renewing their terms. However, we continued with what I consider still a very safe agenda. There wasn't a lot of back and forth. There wasn't a lot of disagreement. They were really there just to kind of hear what we were saying, what we were doing. So I'll share with you over the next several minutes the ways we began to infuse innovation in creating a new board, and how you might be able to take some of these back to your board or a board that you're participating with. Several years ago, I was asked to join a newly created board advisory committee group at United Way Worldwide. So they had just started looking at how do we create these high performing boards. And the group intentionally included the CEO and the respective board chair. And that's a key element of a high performing board, which I'll talk about in a moment. And the charge of this group was to create a toolkit for United Ways to operationalize a high performing board. And what that meant was that we were going to need to reinvent our boards and transition from seat warmers to thought leaders. It meant that we were going to have to recruit those that had a greater stake in our work. It meant letting go of old recruiting practices. It meant putting into practice new ways of deepening the learning for board members and fostering ways to engage, because we want our board members to be champions or true advocates of the mission, not just checking a box off for the resume. Those times were done. This is the work that has fueled my passion for helping nonprofits create new boards, high-performing boards. So the big question is how did we infuse a little bit of innovation into the work? And before I get to, okay, why does that not? I don't know why it's not moving. Okay. I just want to talk about a couple of definitions so that you know where I'm coming from and what I mean by these words as we go through. And my staff has accused me of sometimes I like to make up definition for words. And so this might be one of those times. So they're kind of unique to me. The first is high performing board. So in the chat, if you would just chat, what do you think are the characteristics of a high performing board? Unified vision, strong communication, engaged, collaborative. Active participation, strong perspectives. Wow, you guys are on this. You guys are really smart. 100% involvement. Yep. So you can keep adding. I'm going to share with you the definition that I borrowed from United Way Worldwide. And it won't let me. There we go. A high-performing board is where board members, CEOs, and organizations perform at the highest level to drive results and growth in their communities. And this is going to be done by creating a culture to partner, recruit effectively, provide ongoing education, provide a space for ideation, and ask for board member commitment. And so we're gonna touch on those things as we go through this. The second definition is for innovation. So again, if you could put in the chat, what does innovation mean to you? Growth versus fixed, thinking differently about problems, agility, creativity. Look, you guys, again, you guys are a smart group. I love it. So I took this definition right from the dictionary. Definition of innovation: a new idea, a method, or a device, the introduction of something new. So I like to think of innovation as the thought space to create something new, whether it's an idea, a product, or a process. Whoops, see, I did that. Yep. So let's get cooking. Let's talk about the ingredients for the recipe to create a high-performing board. And those ingredients are partner, recruit, educate, and engage. And the first is partner or partnership. The first ingredient, it's a critical ingredient for success. This is the basic foundation of a strong, high-performing board. Looking at the relationship between the CEO and the board as a true partnership may be a departure from a current design that you're familiar with. It was definitely a departure from our old style of board, where it was really the CEO telling the board what they wanted to know, what they thought they wanted to know. And the partnership is especially important between the CEO and the chair because they set the tone for the relationship between the CEO and the board as a whole. And we know that a weak and dysfunctional or a dysfunctional partnership impedes the effectiveness of both the board and the CEO and puts the organization at risk in a number of ways. Lack of strategic alignment or direction, executive turnover, toxic organization, and the list goes on. We know that we have evidence that shows that a strong and healthy board CEO partnership provides that flexibility and that resilience and leadership that contributes positively to an organization's overall impact. I'll share with you an example of a bad partnership. And the folks that are on the call that are on my board have probably heard this. And it's not about either of them. So I just want to make sure. So I had about, 6-7 years ago, I had a board chair that started to micromanage in a way that was not appropriate. And remember, a board chair is part of a whole board. They shouldn't act alone. So I had this board chair that was really in somewhat of a dictator role that they thought that they were in, and telling me how to run the organization, telling me how to run the board, telling me, all of these things. And then started to kind of infuse themselves into my organization by just dropping by, talking to the staff, finding out what they're doing, asking them to do more work, other things. And it came to a point where I had really thought about leaving the organization because that's not the type of environment that I could work under. And luckily at that time, I had a really strong executive committee that said, you know what, that's not how our board should operate. And ultimately, this person resigned, and realizing that this was just not the right fit, which is why when we'll talk about recruitment in a moment, why recruitment is so important. So the partnership's got to be built on trust and respect, open communication, and a couple things that I do to cultivate this partnership are regular check-ins between the board and the board chair. Open and constant communication. You want to be able to rise up any issues or challenges before they get too big. We have a board chair that is seated for 2 years. So every 2 years, I need to figure out how to work with a new board. And I've had a new board chair. I've had some that are really hands-on, want to be meeting every week. I've had some that are hands-off. I really find a good balance being that I can meet with this person Zoom now instead of face-to-face every couple of weeks, but having access through phone, text, or email, making sure that we're always on the same page is imperative. Another thing that we commit to is no surprises. The last thing that we want is for a board chair or a CEO to be blindsided by something during a board meeting. So we've got to have these open conversations, whether it's with the board chair or the executive committee at that time. But we don't want blindsiding to happen. It's just not a good feeling and not a good place to be in. And then the last of just really how to cultivate a strong partnership is through thoughtful reflection on performance. We all know that one of the board's essential roles is to evaluate the performance of the board chair or of the CEO. And being able to give the CEO feedback on whether there's successes or challenges is absolutely important. It's also important for boards to assess their own performance. So we'll go into an assessment within the next week where board members will assess their own performance on the board, but also the board as a whole. And then you throw all of these things together and it's one tool to help you learn how to be that high-performing board. There are going to be challenges to creating a high-performing board. There's going to be challenges to leading a board through to be more cohesive and one that innovates. It's not like flipping the switch. You can't completely dismantle an entire board in one fell swoop, and you need to carefully plan this path. Your board chair needs to be ready to lead this work, and adding a few of these simple ingredients will help you through the transformation. I've been the president for 15 years, and it's really been in the last probably 2 or 3 that I've really seen the board culture shift towards this high-performing board. And we're far from perfect. It takes energy, it takes time, it takes courage, and I'll talk about courage again, to get where the CEOs and the boards are truly working interdependently and collaboratively. But once we're there, it enhances the capacity to affect change huge. So that's the place we want to get. So the next ingredient is recruitment or recruit. So if you think about the composition of the board, what are the first things you think of? So just add a couple of those thoughts to the chat. What do you think of when we're recruiting for a board? What are we looking for? diversity, variety of experience, change agent. Missing pieces, yeah. People who give a shit. All right, I like that one. Yep, you got to care about it. Learners, yep. Advice that matters. Again, you guys are really smart. So, and I appreciate the responses in there. Creating the right board mix is critical, and moving away from or enhancing that traditional matrix of or board composition is imperative to creating a high performing board. The traditional tool focuses our attention on what people are rather than what the organization needs board members to do. So someone said people that I think there was action or a couple of those types of words in there. That's absolutely correct. We need people that are action oriented. We want to get out of the trap of looking for a specific skill such as marketing or finance, or looking for a specific demographic that might allow a board to simply check a box. We want to get away from that specific connection that someone can make for us. And think about it. Do those that know everyone really introduce you to them? In our case, it's not very often. Those traps keep us looking for that C-suite or that professional to be seated on our board. And our board no longer seats all CEOs. I know there are still boards out there that thrive to find that mix for their board. And a way to get beyond this is to look at the scope of the organization's work, consider the reach of your organization when recruiting, look for recruits that are closer to our work or the type of work. We often overlook important qualities of an individual, such as experience, knowledge, or even perspective when we're solely focused on that skill. And one thing that we do with our volunteers that want to be a part of United Way, we try to place them on committees first so that they have the opportunity to learn about United Way, grow as a volunteer, and we can make sure that they are a good fit and they can make sure that they're a good fit. We need board members, like I said, that are action oriented, and to get to those people, change the narrative, change the question, and consider these questions. What does our board need to accomplish this year or over the next couple years? And do we have the right people to help us do the work? We can still use characteristics and attributes outlined on those traditional matrices, composition, board composition. We then need to go beyond. We need to reach people, as I just said, with knowledge about something. We need to reach people that have a wide range of experience and even consider their perspectives. And what this does, it allows for a different kind of conversation in the boardroom. It allows for creativity, innovation to flow, and it ultimately provides a better output of work. Another way to answer that last question about do we have the right people is to consider including competencies on that matrix or that composition sheet that as you do your recruitment. So look for individuals that are strategic thinkers, because strategic thinking involves analyzing issues and making decisions that can support the organization's mission. Board members with the capacity for innovative thinking make new ideas and solutions more possible. Look for those that are team oriented. I've said that a couple times. People with this competency are more inclined to solve problems as a group. They'll prioritize the best interest of the board or the organization and the members over individual priorities. So it is truly a group effort. And we want to look for individuals that have strong interpersonal competencies. These are strong communication, relational, influence, and reputation competencies. For example, relationship building contributes to a board cohesion and effectiveness. And isn't that what we want? We want a board that's cohesive, that's effective. And if people have the ability to build relationships, we're going to be a lot better in the end. And the last one is experience. And a few people said that in the chat. Collectively, the board needs to represent a variety of life experiences, which overall just improves the efficiency, reduces the likelihood of having a knowledge gap. I believe that these individuals will be better advocates for the community. They'll reach a level of trust faster and potentially be better stewards of the brand. And the best way to get the right person is to interview them, just like you would your employees. We don't think about that sometimes with board members. Sometimes we think, hey, I know this person, let's just bring them on. Well, we've got to change that narrative as well. So we've talked about two ingredients, partnership and recruitment. I want to talk a little bit about educate or education. And there's several ways to educate or inform a board or an entire board. You can do this by setting expectations. Every organization has a list of expectations that a board member signs on to when they accept a board position, which probably addresses what their attendance expectation is. Do they have any conflicts of interest? And what level of giving are we going to ask them to give at? It's kind of an expectation. Whatever the initial tool is that you use, the message needs to be clear about what they're signing up for. They need to know that they're committing to be a partner with the CEO. That's that partnership. They need to know that they'll be asked to offer opinions, whether they're supportive or not. They'll be asked to take risks and to challenge respectfully, I put that in quotes, the CEO in their thought and ideas. And I'll tell you firsthand, that's not the most comfortable place to be, to having your board challenge what you're presenting or what you're wanting to convey. But it's a good space to get to where you can be more comfortable with that. And with the right board, you get more comfortable with that. So let's make sure we have a little fun with educating and learning with our boards. And again, let's change the narrative. And again, let's ask the question, what does our board need to accomplish? And do we have board members that are capable of helping us do that? And please don't get me wrong that there are basics that you still need to cover. You still need to talk about the roles and responsibilities. You still need to make sure that your non-finance people understand the financials. Your board still needs to understand their legal responsibilities. But when you know what your organization needs to accomplish, lean into the board and ask the board members what they need. What will they need to execute on those strategies? Perhaps it's deeper insight to the equity space, or change management, or coaching, or how to have courageous and crucial conversations. Don't assume your board member is fully equipped. Build a plan with them, just as you would do with your staff team. Another tool that we have used, we're going to use it again this year. It's what we call an intent map, and it's a tool where the CEO and the board chair can learn to work with the whole board more effectively. It provides the board members a way to communicate kind of what's their appetite, how will they show up at a board meeting, and just really helps the board and the CEO and the board chair understand how someone is wired and how they might help in a variety of situations. So this is the intent map. And what this is basically a set of continuums. There's 10 of them on here. You can change the continuum, each one of those to work best for your organization. But what we do is we ask board members to plot themselves on a continuum. So is a board member going to be willing to take low risk, or will they take risks? Will they be a high risk taker? Are they going to be a bench warmer, or are they going to be all in? Now, most of the time, most of them say they're going to be all in, because if they're going to show up as a bench warmer, it's probably not a good idea. But are they going to contribute through thinking, or are they more of a hands-on, active type of person? So we ask the board members to plot themselves. We ask the board members to plot the board, where they think the board is in its current state in these continuums. And then I plot myself, and then we look at it so that we can see where the gaps are or where the overlaps are, so we know how to approach the board and how we continue to do our work. I'll give you an example of how this came in handy. A few years ago, we were ready to kind of march down our path of changing to an impact organization, and we needed a board member to be a chair of our impact cabinet that was willing to push, challenge, take some risks, because this was a new place for us to be. And so we went back to the tool and we said, okay, this is the person we have in mind. Let's look at their profile. And they had scored themselves as a low risk taker. This is not the one here, but they had scored themselves as a low risk taker. We needed someone with a high risk or not adverse to risk. So we changed our direction, found a different person, and it all worked out. And so it really can save you some time. We can save, because you don't want to get someone in a position that they're not comfortable in and that they're not going to help move on the mission. So this has been, we'll do this again. We don't do it every single year because we don't have a huge turnover on the board every single year, but we will be utilizing this. And sorry about that, just one second. So, and I'll share this tool if anybody's interested in it. It's been a really cool tool.
And we can, if you share the link with me, I can send it out in email to everyone afterwards.
Okay, perfect. Yep. And as you look at the tool, if you want me, I've got the description on how to use it as well, or I can walk you through it. I'm more than happy to do that. So we are going to talk about our final ingredient. And this is about engagement, engagement. So first, throw away the PowerPoint. Not this PowerPoint, but the PowerPoint that you take into the boardroom where you're just going to like go through slides and not ask for much interaction, because that's a one-sided conversation. Bring ideas to the board that aren't completely mapped out. Bring half-baked ideas, and get away from throwing those softball questions. Give them permission to ideate. Ask them to help you on something. Bring them into the conversation, not just hear out, staff reports. I could share with you, just in my experience with just the work that I've done and the organizations that I've seen, I still see today CEOs that claim that they own their board. They take to their board what they want. They share very minimal. Their board shows up, they nod, and they kind of bless something that I don't even think that they know what they're blessing. I was reading an article in Harvard Business Review, and they called this the telling and selling strategy. Let me tell you, I'm going to just sell it to you, just buy it, and we're out of here. And if you think about what our first ingredient is, it's partnership. That's not really a partnership. That's really just a one-way relationship, because it is definitely a two-way street. So in our organization, we are getting better at this. Our staff team creates executive summaries that I send out with the board agenda to the board, so they can read those on their own. They can take the time to be informed. But the key here is to keeping a board member engaged. We need to change the agenda. The agenda includes what we need input on, what we need conversation about. And again, it's that action, ready. It's got to be action oriented. And again, it takes time to get a board. I mean, you do have turnover on your board, so you've always got someone new. So you've got to keep going through all of this conversation over and over again. And it takes time to get a board into this space. But honestly, the more it's practiced, the easier it becomes. And again, this is why your recruitment piece is so critical. You want to make sure you have the right people in the beginning. And at the end of, creating the space to be innovative, or I like to use the word ideate, is risky. And again, it takes courage. It takes courage from the CEO to hear that disagreement and that challenge sometimes. But if you've got that good partnership with your board and your board chair, it's a two-way street. You just keep having that conversation. One of the last things I want to share is another tool that we'll be implementing in a couple weeks. And Zach, who's on this call, is actually leading the high performing boards work for us here at United Way, and Barbara Craig is also on that committee. We're going to be introducing a tool that we're calling an individual engagement plan. This plan will help board members in identifying different ways that they can contribute to the organization that's beyond their skill. It will be based on their knowledge or their experience or something that they prefer. So it's kind of it'll be I don't want to call it a contract. It's a pledge or a commitment to, this is what I am willing and able to give to United Way during my term. And so in some of those areas that are on that are board participation, which are not negotiable. You need to show up for a board meeting. Leadership, do you have a desire to grow on the board? Do you want to be a committee chair? Do you want to be on the executive committee? Do you want to be in the track to be a board chair someday? They'll let us know what their appetite for that is. Community outreach, volunteer engagement, there will be several opportunities in there for them to check, 2 or 3 of the things that they will commit to doing during their term. Fund development. We said early on, we don't want to recruit solely on the connection that person has, but it's still important that these board members help us raise revenue for our organization, whether it's through raising funds or raising friends. And then, there'll be some other things on there that they, some other community involvement opportunities that they can help us with. So we are in a draft stage of that as we speak. And I'm excited because, we talk about these things as an organization with your staff teams and development plans and all of that. Why should that be any different for your board? We want them to grow and be great stewards for the work that we're doing, but also we want to help individuals be stronger board members when they leave our board and go somewhere else. And so that's what that tool, and I'll be more than happy to share that tool when we get that ready to go. That should be in the next week or so. The last question I want to ask is, with your experiences as a board member, as a CEO, what might have been some of the barriers that you experienced? Just add those to the chat. Time and space, lack of vision, burnout. Mm-hmm. Unwilling to change. Yep. Not well facilitated. No ability to motivate a group because the group didn't know what was expected. Oh, that's a good one, Zach. Yep. Those are all great. And so if you taking what you all have said and what I've talked about, there's really kind of 3 things that I can sum up here. And that if there are no clear expectations, a person can't lead and work towards a mission. If there is no development, we bring people on and they can just kind of become stagnant. They're not learning, they're not growing. And if there are no opportunities for them to get involved, what's the point? I mean, what are they trying to bring change about if there's none of these things? And so in summary, very succinctly, it's clear expectations, development opportunities, and opportunities to engage that make a high performing board. So thank you. for listening and being a part of this.
Thank you, Anna. This is fantastic. I see a bunch of questions have already kind of started to roll in here. If you have any other questions, feel free to post them and I'll try to get to them. Can I have my own to start with? When you first introduced the concept.
I'm going to stop sharing here
Okay.
real quick, just so I can, okay.
When you first introduced the high performing board, what was the response of your team or your board to that?
It's, so we first introduced it probably the true concept of high performing board just in the last couple of years. And the response was positive. The challenge was getting in a rhythm to execute on that work and kind of what was the framework going to be. The unfortunate thing is that we had started looking into this and then COVID hit and, worlds kind of imploded. And so we took a hiatus, and with Zach's leadership, I think we're well on our way just in a very short amount of time to kind of kick back into it. So that with the engagement plan, a new matrix, an assessment, all of these things happening, I think we're going to see some great progress.
So Pam had a great question. How do you keep the board engaged as you shift? We've all shifted to Zoom.
I would have to say that without having the ability to be in a physical space, because that's hard, because we still have things that we need to accomplish. We still do we still had like our rake a difference, which is external. We were raking leaves and helping seniors prepare. That's an opportunity in that kind of engagement. So we still have some of those things, but really it goes back to that piece around asking for feedback, asking for input, asking for the ideas, and not just having this conversation where it's just one-sided. It's engaging the board in that conversation. And I will say that I think we have one of the most engaged boards that I've ever had.
That's wonderful. Michael brought this up, but you might have answered this, which is through the intent map.
Mm-hmm.
Do board members self-assess whether they're a good match for the organization before and during the term? And is the map the tool for that?
So I had made a note. You could actually use this intent map as a recruitment tool as well. What we've done in the past is used it after the board member has been seated. But if you really think about it, and what you're trying to do is build a strong board, why don't we use it as part of the recruitment? And it's almost that part of an application that says, this is how I am. Am I the type of board member you need to do some of the work that you need? So I'd have to talk to our team to see what, their thoughts are on it, but you could use it as a recruitment tool.
Could you use it as a planning tool, saying this is the type of person I would need?
Absolutely. Yep.
Anna, I just riff off of that because I really appreciate where you're talking about. It's a great selection tool for those who are seeking the board member. But when someone had given a comment that people don't necessarily know what's expected of them, that's a really great way to get that in front of them as well, so they can opt out and realize or be all in.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a great idea. Zach, are you taking notes?
That's what we usually have Retta here for, but she's not here. No, I'm learning just as much from this as what we've been teaching and putting together here. And this is, I think, what's important as well, that I've learned from you, Anna, but also in piecing out what we do to put the high performing board committee together, is that there is no that committee gets together for 1 year, does a huge chunk of work and calls it good. It's got to be a constant evolving motion every year, because not only are the people coming in and out that are in the organization that have all these different wants and needs out of their board experience, but also they're bringing to the table different things all the time. But there are adjustments in what the organization needs each year. There's adjustments in how it happens, including last year, as we talked about, with Zoom versus in person. And then all of the fundraising efforts that changed because of all the things going on with COVID. So it is going to have to be a thing that continues to keep being built upon every year. That's what's become clearer to me, is that this is never ending work. And if it does stop, then you will probably see the kinds of progress that Anna put together in the presentation really start to go south. So
Yep. Thank you, Zach.
So there are a couple of really great questions still filtering in here. And Ken asked a question about another model that I'm not familiar with, about where is it here? The Carver board governance model.
Oh,
Are you familiar with it?
Yeah.
And does that
I'm-
fit in with
yeah, I'm
H?
familiar with it and found it to be really complicated. And just it's not, it used to be used pretty heavily, at least by United Ways. And I've seen, because of this high performing board stuff and some other work that United Way as a whole is working on around modern United Way, I'm seeing that not used as often, but it's kind of complex.
Mhm.
And I want to, okay, this sounds really bad. I just want to have some fun and, move things along and help our board members just be as engaged. And when you put processes that are complex, I think it takes away from that. Ken, do you do that at Feeding America?
No, we don't.
Oh, okay.
I've been working with, I'm on another board,
Okay.
several other boards, and one of the boards has adopted the Carver model. I agree. I found it really, really kind of complex, although there was some good things that establish expectations
Sure.
with the CEO and the board. And I didn't have much experience prior. That's why I asked the question. I
Yeah.
wondered if you had any experience with it. And I found it, complex, lots of processes, but it did develop some good
Sure.
relationship expectations between the CEO and the board.
Yeah, so you can take bits and pieces of different processes and create, this as well. I'm curious, Pam Smith, because I know her. Do you use Carver at United Way?
We do not in
Okay.
our organization.
Okay.
I have a great, really great question from Earl. Since good ideation is about new thoughts that might blindside people, how do you have that balance with, don't blindside, but holding your meetings so that they're good for ideation versus just the standard report out and rubber stamp kind of meeting? How do you balance that?
So when I think about blindsiding is a negative behavior of, I'm sharing something that you don't know. And that I don't know how to, I'm struggling with how to explain this. It's kind of like, I'm holding on to this and I'm going to just surprise you with it all. It's not always, Todd, what?
If I could add on, that was
Yeah,
one of my
please.
questions. I mean, that's such an important point that you make around blindsiding. And it's about, maybe you didn't think about it. Well, I need to let my board chair or my board committee know that this is going on and just give them a heads up and get some feedback from them. Maybe they'll help you navigate it. But it's just about being transparent and open beforehand. And here's the other thing that when you talked about is the committees or the board, that's where a lot of discussion goes on. But we should all, the best practices are if we're having conversations or regular standing meetings with board chairs or committee chairs and having those conversations so you're in alignment helps avoid blindsiding, among other things.
Yep.
And in fact-
Because I don't look at innovation or thought generation as a blindside if it's a new thought. I don't look at that. I look at as a CEO or even as a CEO, we've got to remember there are so many paths of communication that have to occur that sometimes it's not intentional that you forget something. And, it's just, there's so much noise that you've got to be able to, just that constant communication, open communication, transparency, as Todd was saying, is absolutely critical. I am actually on Todd's board, and Todd does a great job. I'm one of his committee chairs. Just connect. Just, whether it's an email or text or whatever, just connect if there's a thought. And if it's kind of that, if in doubt, overshare.
Mm-hmm.
Because at some point you're going to forget something and it's going to really bite you.
So
To
Donna's
that point,
raised a.
Oh, Todd,
sorry,
I'm
go
sorry.
just to add
Go
on
ahead, Todd.
to Anna's, yesterday we had a committee meeting, and I unintentionally, right, I blindsided her because we have a process for our board. We have an action item. The action item outlines the issue, what was discussed, what's behind it. That we send out to the committees and to the board, so when they get the packets, they know what they're talking about if they haven't been in the conversations. And yesterday I had sent out the agenda. I didn't look, there was an action item listed on it. And Anna's like, what are the action item? You're asking us to take action on something we've never seen before. I was like, oh, that's my fault. Honestly, that was the blindsiding that you could want to avoid, right? Because I didn't check out, but good
It
example.
wasn't a bad blindside. A bad blindside is when, like something happens in the community and you're going to be impacted by it, but you didn't know about it. Those are really the ones you want to stay away from.
I
So I
typed
think
in the chat that it goes to intent, because I've had some board members and the intention is out in front of God and everybody, and it's and the unfortunate piece too is if your board leadership doesn't jump in, then there's a whole new status quo in those relationships. So I always like to say too that the executive leadership is also stewarding the culture of the board.
Right. Yep.
That's
Absolutely.
a great way to put it. So I think we have time for one last question and Donna, I love this question. Anna, do you have any favorite innovation tools that you use for gathering input from the voice of the customer, ideation, or ever that you bring in? I assume that you bring into the board.
So we often, we only meet 6 times a year for the board. So there's a lot of work that happens in committee work, committee level as well. But I think that the opportunity for board members to take an idea and, and this is kind of an old-fashioned tool, but breaking into smaller groups where they can have a little bit more of an intimate conversation and then bringing those ideas back as opposed to just a full board. Because I will tell you, sometimes fewer people will speak up when the whole board when we're all sitting in the room at the same time. So break them out, give them an idea or give them a concept and have them come back to the whole board with some of that thought. I think you'll find you'll have a little bit more conversation in 3 people than you will in 14 people. So, that's something for us to look at as we continue to grow on this and identify tools and see what works and what I can share later.
So that
Thank you,
speaking of sharing later, I think that's a great segue to wrap up because that's what Disruptors League is all about. Is about sharing as a community, helping each other develop your practice, and would like to invite you guys, everyone, to come back to our future sessions. So first of all, thank you, Anna. This was an incredible session. We have recorded it. We'll be posting it on the Disruptor League site. So if you want to come back and revisit. Anna will share out the tools we mentioned today, the intent map, individual engagement plan, and that maybe a little bit later on. But please come back for our future Disruptor Studio events. We have a really interesting one next week. It's a very small registration. We're capping at 20 people because it's an interactive learning session on how to facilitate workshops virtually. So if this is something you're really interested in, send me an email personally, because we're not blasting this out to everyone. We also have our next Disruptor Studio Assembly, where we bring people together to talk about and share the more vulnerable, emotional side of innovation and challenges you face. So we create a safe space to come together to discuss that. That's on February 24th. Again, we'll be following up with you guys. And then we have lots of other great programming coming up. So please stay tuned and rejoin us. These sessions always take us to really interesting spaces. So thanks so much, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.